We don't have a pair for number 1, so let's see if we can figure out a pair. What do all three in our angles in our triangle add up to? 180. So I'm going to do 180 minus the two angles that we have. So minus 75 minus 50. Thank you. So 180 minus 75 minus 50. Don't forget your calculators for tomorrow. We get 55. Now that we have a pair, we can do law of sines. So we're going to do sine of 55 over 7 is equal to, what do we want to find next? Sure, we can find A. So we're going to use angle A to find A. So sine of 50 over A. So to solve, we want to cross multiply. So we get A times sine of 55 is equal to 7 times sine of 50. Divide both sides by sine of 55 to get the A all by itself. So A is equal to, this we're going to put in our calculator. So 7 times sine of 50 divided by sine of 55. So we get 6.5. So A is going to be 6.5. What would I need to do to find side C? We're going to do the same thing. So we start with the proportion that we were given, the first one that we found. So we have sine of 55 over 7 is equal to, now we're trying to find C, so we're going to set up a proportion with our C's. So sine of 75, remember it's always sine of the angle over the side. Cross multiply and divide, so we get C times sine of 55 is equal to 7 times sine of 75. Divide by sine of 55. So C is equal to, this we're going to put in our calculator, 7 times sine of 75 divided by sine of 55. We get 8.3. So C is 8.3. So these would be our three answers here. So looking at number 3, we always want to start with the pair that we're given. So we have angle A and side A. Remember, the capital letters are angles. So it's not going to tell you it's angle A, but capital letters are the angles. So I'm going to start with my proportion. Sine of 26 over 49.8 is equal to, what do we have to find next? B. So it gives us angle B, so sine of 23 over B. So we're going to cross multiply and divide. So B times sine of 26 is equal to 49.8 times sine of 23, and divide by sine of 26. So we're going to put this into our calculator. So for B, we get 44.4. What would we do next? Find angle C. How would we find angle C? Awesome. Add them and subtract from 180. So we're going to do 180 minus 26 minus 23. We get 131. So angle C, is 131. How do we find side C? I got to set up another proportion. So we're going to start with the ones that were given. We start with our sine. So sine of 26 over 49.8 is equal to, now we're going to use C to find side C. So sine of 131 degrees over C. We cross multiply and divide. So C times sine of 26 is equal to 49.8 times sine of 131. Divide both sides by sine of 26. And we're going to put this into our calculator. So 49.8 times sine of 131 divided by sine of 26. We get 85.7. So side C is 85.7. Don't forget, when you're finding the angle, you need to make sure you put the degrees sign. So for 5, when you're given two sides and an angle, so side, side, angle, you always have to check for two triangles. You're either going to have one triangle, no triangles, or two triangles. So we always have to check and see if we have two. So I'm just going to draw our chart just in case we have two. So triangle 1 and triangle 2. And we always start with the angle that's given. So angle A is 30. And that's going to be the same in both triangles because it's given. What would we have to find next? We start with the proportion that we have. So we have a pair of A's. So I'm going to do sine of 30 over 22. We have to find B next because we only have side B. So when I set up that proportion, I'm going to have sine of B, because I'm looking for angle B, over 44. So remember, sine of the angle over the side. Here we can multiply both sides by 44. So it cancels out there. And then I'm going to put this into my calculator. 44 times sine of 30 divided by 22. What do we get? You get 1. 1 equals sine of B. 1 is not our degrees. It's not our angle. How do we find what the angle is? Do the inverse sign. We do the sine -1 button in our calculator. So the inverse sine of 1 gives us 90. So 90 is our degrees. So angle B is 90 degrees. Let's finish finding everything for our first triangle, then we can worry about if we have a second triangle or not. How do we find angle C?
The proportion of the first one. Oh, wait, you have to subtract by 180.
Awesome. Subtract them from 180. So 180 minus 30 minus 90, we get 60. So angle C is 60 degrees. And lastly, side C. How do we find side C? Set up the proportion. So I'm going to start with the one that's given. Since A's were given, I'm going to do sine of 30 over 22 is equal to sine of 60, because now we're doing C. So sine of C, which is 60, over side C. We cross multiply to solve for C. So C times sine of 30 is equal to 22 times sine of 60 divided by sine of 30. So C is equal to, we're going to put this into our calculator, 22 times sine of 60 divided by sine of 30. So we get 38.1. So side C is 38.1. All right, so now let's find triangle 2. What do we need to find triangle 2? What would we do next? Angle B. We always start with the first one that we found. We found angle B first, so we're going to start with angle B. To find our new angle B, we do 180 minus the original angle B. So new angle B is 180 minus 90, which is 90. How would we find our new angle C? Add the 2 and subtract from 180. So 180 minus 90 minus 30. We get angle C is 60. What do we notice about triangle 1 and triangle 2? They're the same. So they're the same triangle. So we technically only have one triangle here. All right, so 7 gives us 2 sides and an angle. So we have to check to see if we have 2 triangles. So I'm just going to list it over here. We may not have 2, but I'm going to write it just in case because it's easier to keep track. Start with what's given. So angle B is given, which is 28 degrees. So it's going to be the same in both of them. Angle B is 28 degrees. What would we need to find first? A. We want to find angle A because we'll start with the proportion that we have, which is the B. So it'll be sine of 28, always sine of the angle over the side, 18.4, is equal to, now we have side A, so we have to find angle A first. So sine of A over 19.6. We can multiply both sides by 19.6. So it cancels out on the right, and I can put this in the calculator. So we have 19.6 times sine of 28 divided by 18.4. So we get 0.50089. It keeps going. I'm just going to keep it in the calculator. This isn't our angle. What do we do to find the angle? Inverse sine. So we got to do the inverse sine of this to find the angle. So inverse sine of that answer, we get 30.00, which I'll just call 30 degrees. So 30 degrees is angle A. How would we find angle C? Add them and subtract from 180. So 180 minus 28 minus 30. We can just throw that in our calculator. We get 122. So 122 degrees. Degrees because we're talking about angles. What would we do to find side C? 122. Is that what I said? 122. What would we do to find side C? Use the B's. So we were given our proportion with B's, so we're going to use that. Sine of 28 over 18.4 is equal to, we're looking for side C, so we're going to use angle C. So sine of 122 over C. We cross multiply. C times sine of 28 is equal to 18.4 times sine of 122. And divide by sine of 28 to get the C all by itself. So C is equal to, we're going to put this in our calculator, 18.4 times sine of 122 divided by sine of 28. So we get 33.2. All right, now let's check and see if we have a second triangle. We always start with the first angle that we found. How do we find angle A in our second triangle? Awesome, 180 minus 30. So 180 minus the first angle that we found. So this gives us 150. How do we find the new angle C? Add the 2 angles in our second triangle and subtract from 180. So 180 minus 28 minus 150. What do we get for angle C? 2 degrees. What if this was a negative? what would that mean?
That there's no-
That there's no second triangle. So if you end up with a negative for one of your angles, there is no second triangle. But we ended up with 2 degrees. So we've got a small angle here. Now let's find side C. So we're going to set up a proportion. Start with the one that was given. Sine of 28 over 18.4 is equal to sine of C. So sine of 2 over C. We cross multiply and divide. So C times sine of 28 is equal to 18.4 times sine of 2. Divide by sine of 28. So C is equal to, we're going to put this in our calculator, 18.4 times sine of 2 divided by sine of 28. We get 1.36, so I'll call it 1.4. So these would be our 2 triangles. So we technically have 6 answers here. All right, let's do you want to do 9 or 10? Sure, let's do 9. So 9 asks us for the area of the triangle with the given measurements. When you're given 2 sides and an angle, you're going to use this formula. Make sure your calculator is in degrees. A lot of people on the quiz got this question wrong, and I gave you the formula. I don't know what went wrong. Maybe your calculator was in radians and not degrees. Maybe you just typed it in wrong.
I wrote the formula and I didn't put the answer.
Oh, or you just didn't even put the answer.
And I had the answer on my calculator. Isn't that wonderful?
So let's just pay attention. Let's pay attention when we do this. All right, so let's put it in our formula. Our area is equal to both sides, so 15 times 5 times sine of 30 over 2. Now we're going to put this in our calculator. Be careful when putting it in your calculator. 15 times 5 times sine of 30. I'm going to click equals and then divided by 2. So you should get 18.75. 18.75 what when we're talking about area? Inches squared. Don't forget the unit. All right, so for 13, we're given 2 angles and a side. We don't have any pairs. Notice how we're given a side, 2 sides and an angle. We don't have any pairs. We don't have angle A and side A or side B and angle B. We can't find a pair, so we have to use law of cosines. So we always want to start with finding the angle that's, this is a side. This is actually lowercase c. It doesn't have degrees, so it's a side. We're given all 3 sides. Again, we're using law of cosines because we don't have a pair. But we always want to start with the biggest angle first. What's our largest angle?
Oh wait, so that's supposed to be a lowercase c?
Yeah, that's supposed to be lowercase. So we want to find c first. So I'm going to start with the formula c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared minus 2ab times cosine of c. Make sure you know these formulas for tomorrow. So we're going to plug in everything we have. 12 squared is equal to 6 squared plus 9 squared minus 2 times 6 times 9 times cosine of c. Let's solve. So 144 is equal to 36 plus 81 minus 2 times 6 times 9. So we get 108 times cosine of c. 36 plus 81 is 117. So I'm going to subtract 117 from both sides. Bless you. 144 minus 117 is 27. Is equal to negative 108 times cosine of c. How do we get the cosine of c all by itself? Divide by negative 108. So 27 divided by negative 108. We get negative 0.25 is equal to cosine of C. How do we find angle C? Inverse. So we're going to do the inverse of cosine. Bye, Ian. So in the calculator, we got 104.5 degrees.
Wait, do you have to do like negative 0.25?
And then the inverse of that. So angle C is 104.5. We still have to find angle A and angle B. Next, let's start with the smallest ones. You always want to find the largest first. Second is smallest. So let's find angle A next. So I'm going to start with the proportion that I have now. I'm going to use law of sines. Start with the proportion. So we have a pair. We have the C's now. So sine of 104.5 over 12 is equal to sine of A over 6. I can multiply both sides times 6. And then we're going to put this in the calculator. 6 times sine of 104.5 divided by 12. You get 0.484 is equal to sine of A. How do we find what A is? Inverse sine. So we're going to do sine negative 1 in our calculator. So the inverse sine of that answer, we get 28.9 degrees. Lastly, how do we find angle B? What do? Add them and subtract from 180. So 180 minus 104.5 minus 28.9. We get 46.6 degrees. When you're talking about angles, don't forget the degrees. So these would be our 3 answers. All right, next, do you want to do 18 or 19?
19.
Sure, let's do 19. So here we're using Heron's formula to find the area. The question on the test will say, use Heron's formula to find the area. You just have to know what Heron's formula is. So Heron's formula has 2 parts. First, we have to find what S is, and then we plug that into our area formula. So S is 12 plus 18 plus 7 divided by 2. So you just add all 3 sides and divide by 2. So we get 18.5. So our area is equal to the square root of 18.5 times 18.5 minus 12 times 18.5 minus 18 times 18.5 minus 7. So I like to do it separate, subtract each one first, and then put it all in the calculator. If you're putting it all in the calculator at once, put parentheses. You need the parentheses. So 18.5 times 6.5 times 0.5 times 11.5. So 18.5 times 6.5 times 0.5 times 11.5. So you should get 691.4375, and then we take the square root of that. So our area is going to be 26.29, which we could say 26.3. On the test, it'll tell you what to round to. 26.3 what? What's our unit here? Meters squared. It's area, so our unit's going to be squared. So this was on the quiz, which you will see it on the test tomorrow. So it gives us the cosine of negative square root, or cosecant of negative square root 5. So cosecant goes with which trig function?
Sine.
Sine. And sine is what over what?
Opposite.
Opposite over hypotenuse. So that means cosecant is going to be the reciprocal of that. So it'll be hypotenuse over opposite. All right, so let's put this on our triangle, in our coordinate plane, so we know where it's at. So cosecant or sine is negative. So it's not in the all positive one. It's not in the sine is positive one because it's negative. Tangent is greater than 0, so that tells us that tangent is positive. So which quadrant are we in?
T.
T.
I thought you said C.
Tangent is positive. So we're in the tangent positive one.
S and A are not positive?
Right, because cosecant was negative. So you're not in the all positive, you're not in the sine positive. So our theta comes from the center, so our theta is going to be here. Opposite, we said, is 1. And the hypotenuse is square root 5. Remember, hypotenuse is always positive, so that means it has to be a negative one. And it makes sense because we go down to get to our point, so we're going down, so we have a negative y. So negative 1. How would we find our adjacent? Pythagorean theorem. Be careful. A lot of people on the quiz got messed up here, where they did negative 1 squared plus 5 squared equals the other one squared. But remember, it has to be equal to your hypotenuse squared. So we have negative 1 squared plus, I'll call it a squared since it's our adjacent, is equal to square root 5 squared. Negative 1 squared is 1 plus a squared is equal to, what is square root 5 squared? 5. Subtract 1. So a squared is equal to 4. So what is a? 2. Now we have to be careful here because we're going to the left, so we're going in the negative direction on our x-axis, so it's negative 2. So our adjacent is negative 2. So let's find our 6 trig functions. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So that would be negative 1 over square root 5. Can we have a square root in our denominator? No, we have to rationalize. So multiply the top and the bottom by square root 5. So we get negative square root 5 over 5. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So negative 2 over square root 5. We have to rationalize. So negative 2 square root 5 over 5. Tangent, opposite over adjacent. Negative 1 over negative 2, which would be 1/2. Yes, yeah. Now let's find the reciprocals. Cosecant was given, that's negative square root 5. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So that would be square root 5 over negative 2. So you just flip it before you rationalize. We flipped the original answer here. And then cotangent, we flip 1 over 2, which would be 2 over 1, which is just 2. One last thing you're going to see on the test tomorrow is determining which quadrant you're in. So let's say we have sine of theta is less than 0 and cosine theta is greater than 0. Let's figure out what quadrant we're in. All students take calculus. If sine is less than 0, it's negative. So which 2 quadrants can we eliminate? A and S. It's not in the all positive one. It's not in the sine positive one. If cosine is positive, which quadrant are we in? C. So that would be quadrant 4. Remember, quadrants go 1, 2, 3, 4. let's say cotangent is less than 0 and cosecant is greater than 0. All students take calculus. Talia, cotangent's less than 0. Which two would we eliminate?
Wait. If cotangent is less than 0, it's a negative?
Yeah.
Wait, so
Cotangent goes with which one? Which trig function?
tan.
Tan.